Vision News. Good morning and welcome to Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern. My name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, and I will be your host. Thank you so much for joining us here on the last Wednesday of 2025. It is New Year's Eve, so happy New Year's Eve to everyone out there, and happy New Year. We're going to be ringing in the new year in, a few hours. So be safe. Definitely be with family. And we're going to do a little bit of reflection on the year. I've picked out some, top headlines that have happened during this year that, stood out to me, and just do a little bit of research. Of course, you guys know how I like grok. And I was like, so what are the top headlines, in your perspective, what got the most attention? And so we'll be sharing those today. And also today at our 8 o'clock hour, will be open mic. So if you would like to join me here on the show just to ask any questions or to give your opinion about, some of the headlines that I brought up, or maybe there's a headline that you may want discussed and I haven't brought it up yet, just let me know. You can send me an email at unfilteredvisionnews@gmail.com or send me a message on X. Just let me know in the chat that you've done either so that I can go ahead and send you the mic. Well, with that, we're going to get into our kids' corner.
In a vibrant park, Alex felt the joy of a new day. The flowers danced with the breeze. At the pond, Alex watched the ducks swim. Their playful splashes made him giggle. Simple joys are everywhere. Alex met Mia, who shared her cookies. They laughed together, making a new friendship that brightened the day. Together, they climbed a tree. Alex felt brave and free, discovering the world from high above. On the grass, they watched clouds float by. Alex imagined castles and dragons, finding magic in simple things. Alex and Mia shared their toys, each taking turns. Their laughter filled the air, showing how sharing brings happiness. As the sun set, Alex felt grateful. He learned that joy comes from every little moment, and friends make it brighter. One day at a time, Alex found joy in the simple things. Remember, happiness is all around us if we take the time to see it. One sunny morning in a vibrant park, Alex felt the joy of a new day.
And that's the thing. Joy is all around us. And so we need to make sure that we're looking at every single thing because, there's a lot of craziness going on. We're going to talk a little bit about the fraud. Again, we're going to talk about the top 5 articles that happened during this year. And sometimes the news can just seem like the bad news all the time. And it can be very discouraging. right? And the one thing I wanted to do differently on my program is, yes, I do have to share what's going on outside, but let's think about what can we do to turn it around and make it better? What can we do to stop maybe fraud in our state that we know about? What can we do to ensure that, people around us in our community are doing better? It's up to us. It's up to each one of us individually to make it happen, right? It's not somebody else's job. It's our job. So let's make sure we do what we're supposed to do. And with that, we're going to transition to reading our daily reflection of how to honor God with our bodies. So, God, please guard my thoughts. God, help me to fix my thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. So I will think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. God, please help me listen to your voice. God, help me to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. God, protect my eyes from sin's damage. God, I make a covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully. God, please speak life over my mouth. God, set a guard over my mouth. Lord, keep watch over the doors of my lips. God, please help my hands to serve generously. God, help me to do good to everyone, especially to those who belong to our family in the faith. God, please protect my body and help me to honor you, God, with purity. God, help me to honor you with my body. And God, please protect my feet and help me walk in your path. God, let your word be a lamp for my feet and a light on my path. And that is something that I do make sure I'm reading every day, right? And being consistent in that, because that is something that we need to remember how to honor God with our bodies. And with that, I want to give us a reminder that the Ultimate Wealth Expo is going to be this Sunday, January 4th, 2026, at 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. And that's going to be at the Deepak Fitness Center, and that's at 2040 Headland Drive, and that's going to be in East Point, Georgia. So if you are in the greater Atlanta or Atlanta area, or even outside, a little bit outside of those areas, and you're within driving distance, definitely check it out. They're going to be talking about fitness, spiritual, political, economic issues, environment, career, emotional, education, social. So this is definitely going to be a mind and body event. There's going to be empowerment, food, vendors, activities, and speakers. I'm personally not going to be one of the speakers, but I did have two individuals, Sheba and Takon. They were on my show earlier this month sharing about the Ultimate Wealth Expo. And I just find it fabulous that they're able to offer it, and it's free to anyone who wants to go and join and participate. And so I'm so grateful for them. Just really looking at your health and your wealth, because guess what? If you got all this wealth and you not healthy, I mean, what are you really doing? You can't really enjoy it. There's nobody who you sharing this with, right? But your health is your ultimate wealth, because as long as you're healthy, you can continue to do what you need to do, right? So, again, that's going to be this Sunday, January 4th, from 1 to 7 p.m. at the Deepak Fitness Center at 2040 Headline Drive in East Point, Georgia. So, make sure that you are there. I will definitely be there and looking forward to it. And so, with that, we're going to get into one of our first videos of the show. Now, the reason why I picked this one, some people like Melanie King, some people don't. I appreciate her. Um, what I want, the reason why, again, I chose this video is because not only is it exposing fraud in Minnesota, it's also looking at um, voter interference. I'll call it that. I'll say voter interference, where they're actually filling out people's absentee ballots. And if this is actually true, that this has happened and it hasn't been investigated, this can probably get really interesting because they have people on camera um, making some pretty interesting claims about some politicians and voting. So definitely pay attention to the end. I will be linking the video in my post later on. So let's check this out.
In the state of Minnesota, especially in Minneapolis, this daycare right here, run by Somalians, has taken in from the Minnesota government $1.1 million. This daycare says it can hold up to 40 children. I went up to the door. The door is locked, and as you can see, the windows are blacked out. I can't hear any children inside this daycare. It's midday right now. You'd think there'd be children in there playing, being taught, but no one is in there. This daycare, within 2 years, has taken in over $2 million. The Somalians are robbing the taxpayers in Minnesota blind. This is just one daycare located in Minneapolis that are doing exactly the same thing. We've went into daycare after daycare. All the doors are locked, all the windows are blocked out, and they're raking in millions upon millions of dollars. This Tim Walz's Minnesota is allowing this to go on. It's super easy to find fraud. All you need to do is go up to a door, try to open it. It's closed and there's no children. So you know these daycares, they're not full, but yet they're taking in millions of dollars every year. Let me know your thoughts on this one.
Hello, I'm HHS Deputy Secretary Jim O'Neill. I'm here with Assistant Secretary Alex Adams. Alex oversees the Administration for Children and Families. Intrepid journalists have made shocking and credible allegations of extensive fraud in Minnesota's child care programs. We believe the state of Minnesota has allowed scammers and fake daycares to siphon millions of taxpayer dollars over the past decade.
My office, ACF, provides Minnesota $185 million in child care funds each year. That money should be helping 19,000 American children, including toddlers and infants. Any dollar stolen by fraudsters is stolen from those children. Yesterday, I spoke directly with the director of the Minnesota Child Care Services Office. She could not tell me with confidence whether those allegations of fraud are isolated or whether there's fraud stretching statewide.
Today, we have taken 3 direct actions against the blatant fraud that seems to be rampant in Minnesota. First, I have activated our Defend the Spend system for all ACF child care payments across America. Starting today, we require a justification, receipt, or photo evidence before we make a payment. Second, I have just signed and sent a demand letter to Governor Walz. I required a full 360 review of these centers. This includes attendance records, licenses, complaints, investigations, and inspections.
And third, we've launched a dedicated fraud reporting hotline and email address at childcare.gov. Whether you're a parent, a provider, a member of the public, we want to hear from you. Let me be crystal clear. ACF expects every state to uphold the highest standards of oversight, monitoring, and accountability for federal dollars. Minnesota is no exception.
We're committed to holding bad actors accountable. Regardless of rank or office, anyone who's involved in perpetrating this fraud against the American people should expect to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
Produced by the U.S.
I'm sorry. The way they were looking and like talking, I know this is serious, but it kind of reminded me of like a SNL skit. I don't like SNL, but it just seemed like a skit. So I just want to make sure, and I have a lot more to show you guys. This thing is crazy. And again, I'm under the weather, so my voice is a little off, but it says, I just want to make sure it's not just Minnesota. Okay, it says across the country, I've activated our Defend the Spend system for all ACF payments starting today. Okay, across America. So every state, because guys, I just did the video uncovering, this is going on in a lot of states, probably every state, I'm thinking. But Ohio, I highlighted that this guy just started looking into these daycares and things. It's going on there. In Massachusetts, there's a whistleblower, someone speaking out in Washington, California. It's all over the place. But guys, look at this. Look at this. Look at this. This says here in 2018, this is insane. In 2018, Minnesota saw $3 million in autism claims because we know they are stealing money from children with autism. When I told you guys that we are in dark times, that we are in end times, evil has no bounds. They were willing to steal from children, steal from American taxpayers, steal from, Medicaid, all of these different things, but actually stealing from disabled children. Does it get any more? I mean, there is a lot more evil than that, but just think of how disgusting that is. If they're willing to do this, what else aren't they doing? Are they trafficking children, selling children? It seems as though they are willing to do anything for a dollar. Okay, so that was $3 million. In 2023, after the Somalis invaded, they took $400 million in autism claims. Guys, I need you to look at what I'm saying. 2018, it was only $3 million. Then in 2023 alone, $400 million. Who approved that? How can you go from 3 million to 400 million and no one bats an eye? Or, as I've told you, from the top down, it is all corrupt. It is all corrupt. But let's listen to this. This is from Congressman Andy Ogles. I think that's his last name.
When you look specifically at Somalia, where they're manipulating the system. So in 2018, there was $3 million in Medicaid claims for autism. Now you fast forward to 2023 after they were invaded by Somalis, and suddenly those claims for Medicaid for autism is almost $400 million, 399. So we know there's just hundreds of millions of dollars in fraud and abuse just in that one city. Now you add in Chicago, now you add in New York, now you add in every big city, blue city in America where they've been invaded by foreigners who are on and scamming the system. That's money taken away from you. Look, we still have 22 veterans a day that are killing themselves. That's money taken away from veterans. We have kids all across this nation who can't read at the third grade level, not on grade level. That's money away from them. We've got to prioritize America first, means Americans first. America first.
And I wanted to pause it right there because I'm glad he brought that up, especially about children that are in the third grade that can't read. And this is an epidemic, okay? When children are not proficient by the third grade, it's almost like they get lost in the system. And it's bad enough our children don't know how to handwrite. They don't know how to sign their name in cursive. They stopped doing that over 20 years ago. They stopped teaching our children how to handwrite. Now our babies can't even read, but hey, they know their pronouns. They know all these other things. And the property taxes keep going up. And the largest part of property taxes is schools. What are the schools doing? Now it's time to investigate everybody. If you are getting any type of federal money, state money, if you are an entity that is getting money based on taxes, based on a tax structure, okay, you need to be thoroughly investigated. And if you're failing at your job, you need to be held accountable. You need to be fired. Standards need to be raised again. Okay. And we need to get people out of these schools who are indoctrinating children and not educating them, period. The school boards need to be overturned, period. I understand that these are elected positions. We need everybody to run for elected school board positions everywhere across this country and turn this thing around. It's not going to be turned around waiting on other people to change it. You've got to get up, go outside, get off the couch, get engaged, please. This needs to happen. And Sassy Lady, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us and reposting the stream.
Means American workers first. And so we've got to have those tough conversations. We've got to stop the H-1B visas. We need to pause all visas. We need to fix that system because we know it's broken. We know that it's being used against us, literally used against us.
Now, Like I told you, this fraud is layered in many different ways. I'm just going to skim through a bunch of it, guys. It's insane. It all leads back to Tim Walz. It all leads back to the top. But it says here's another Somalia scam going on in Minnesota. Fake medical transportation companies. This story is getting bigger by the day.
I found out that in Minnesota, they have something called non-emergency medical transportation. So this is going to the dentist's office, therapy, whatever it might be. And I said, well, how many of these companies are there? And the research came back that there are 1,020 of them, and more than 800 of them are Somali-owned. Nobody from the state of Minnesota ever cross-checks to see if any rides were ever actually provided. All they did was write the check.
Now, I was hoping to catch it before that ending, but look at this.
I found out that in Minnesota...
Sorry. Pause that. So this is, I don't know if you've heard about this, but Judge Sarah West in Minnesota wrongly overturned a unanimous jury verdict in November against Abdifatah, I can't say his name, Yusuf, in a $7.2 million fraud case with overwhelming evidence against Yusuf. This is why feds need to get involved. Minnesota's judiciary is corrupt. Well, they're going to have to go to everywhere.
Big reversal in a $7.2 million fraud case in Hennepin County. The judge has thrown out the jury's guilty verdict.
This wasn't some technical hiccup. These fraudsters, Abdifatah Yusuf and Lul Ahmed, were convicted on 6 counts of charges, months of evidence, a jury that deliberated for hours, all erased in one ruling.
Yusuf and his wife, Lol Ahmed, were charged with stealing $7.2 million of taxpayer money through Medicaid overbilling in a personal care assistant, or PCA, scam. The couple allegedly spent tens of thousands of the fraud money.
And here's the part that rattled people inside the system. The judge didn't say the fraud didn't happen. She said the state couldn't prove who was responsible, which raised this question on everyone's minds. If a case this obvious can't hold, what happens to the rest? Because this ruling hit while Minnesota is already buried under billion-dollar fraud scandals, overseas money trails, and growing federal probes into how taxpayer money keeps disappearing. And here's the twist most people missed. Once that verdict collapsed, the issue stopped being one defendant. It became about whether Minnesota's system can still enforce fraud at all, or whether the feds are stepping in because the state no longer can. And that's where this story really starts. Here's why this case collapsing came out of nowhere and was shocking for most people. This wasn't a messy jury split or a hung panel. It was a unanimous guilty verdict, and that's because all the facts were on the prosecution's side. The fraudulent couple had a home healthcare business that barely existed, and billing Minnesota's Medicaid program for services that either weren't documented or never happened at all. But that wasn't all.
The jury heard evidence that he ran his home health care company, Promise Health, out of a mailbox at a Central Avenue address where multiple other home health care companies were supposedly located.
And what's more, they followed the money and found a whole lot of it in Abdifatah's accounts. Over $1 million moved from the business into personal accounts. Nearly $400,000 withdrawn in cash. You might be thinking, what could they have possibly needed that much money for? Well, according to prosecutors, they splurged it on luxury purchases, mansions, luxury vacations, a lifestyle that stood out immediately because it didn't exactly line up with their paycheck.
The files documenting spending sprees in which defendants, get this, took taxpayer money that was obviously meant to feed hungry kids during the pandemic, and instead they used it to buy fancy cars, property, jewelry.
And when jurors heard all that evidence, it only took them a few hours to reach a verdict. The jury foreperson later said this about the case.
It was not a difficult decision whatsoever. The deliberation took probably 4 hours at most, based off of the state's evidence that was presented.
So that's a short part of a longer video. But you can see even in the judicial level, even when someone is convicted, well, it's overturned. It's overturned. And why would this be overturned? It makes no sense unless they are all in on it. And we know that they are. They will use, it does not matter what it is, okay? Whether it's to help money that's supposed to go to the elderly, the disabled, children, veterans, no matter what, this evil is pervasive. And this is how we know we are in the last days, because there is nothing that they will not do, what level they will stoop to in order to enrich themselves. Because what is it? What do we know? That the love of money is the root of all evil. But look at this. I exposed, and I told you guys, there's a whistleblower. Back in 2018, on my last video, I played that clip where this was all exposed. A lot of the stuff that we're seeing now was exposed back then. It was given to Governor Tim Walz. It was given to all of these different people within the government. They did nothing with it. And then anyone convicted, well, it was overturned. But then also, now I just found this clip that Project Veritas was so far ahead of the Somali fraud.
And I want to pause that because actually Tim Walz did put in place a task force. They were given, like a budget of $5 million to find the fraud. And that was in like 2019. So that was pre-pandemic, right? The question is, why is there more fraud after you put the task force in place? That's the bigger question. Because yes, he did address this. It was addressed. Like I said, they did put a task force in place. That's been documented. But the fraud has gotten worse. So was it symbolic? Because it didn't help. There's going to be a lot of explaining that has to be done. And I know a lot of people say, well, it's their state. They can do what they want to with their money. The problem is they're using federal funding to do this. The state gets federal funds, and then they disseminate those dollars at the state level. Just because it's disseminated at the state level does not make it federal funds. And so when you're dealing with federal money and fraud, it's a whole different level.
In Minnesota, okay, we exposed their illegal ballot harvesting schemes in 2020. No one was ever arrested. So I'm seeing this pop up now with them doing this. Well, they have discovered election fraud, but let me take you back to 2020.
James O'Keefe here in downtown Minneapolis at the scene of the crime. The person you're about to meet, Liban Mohammed, aka King Liban 1, boasts about the hundreds of absentee ballots in his car.
Numbers don't lie. Numbers don't lie. Wajida gaarigayga waa buuxaa. Waxaas waa absent ballot salka yaala. Soo ma jeedin. Fiiri, waxaas oo dhan soo ma jeedin. Waa buuxaa gaarigayga. Waa buuxaa yaala. Waxaas kulli waa Jamaal Cusmaan way. Fiiri. Fiiri. 300 clear maanta soo dhacday oo Jamaal Cusmaan. Yeah.
There was video. You could see the video. There was a video out and about that he has the ballots in his car.
Right.
And talking about the only way you can win is with money. I was looking at them and they were not filled. They were blank.
Who is the one filling out the absentee ballots? People who work with, like Ilhan Omar. Where do they pay the money? The minute we sign the thing, the election, that's what you get paid.
Money is everything. Money is the key in this world. If you ain't got money, you should not be here, period.
At the end of this street,
yes,
there's 3 towers called one tower.
Okay.
And it's all seniors, and they took every ballot.
Every ballot. They just take them from them.
Every single ballot. They knock on the door and say, your ballots, come give it to me, give it to me.
They don't even pay them for it. They just take it.
No. And the ones that didn't vote on ballots, the young people and the women and stuff, they were paying cash. They were getting bags of money the last 1 week here to drive people. So there's a vested interest, but we are victims of the system. They don't give a shit about any Somali.
2 in the morning, still hustling.
Who is the one filling out the absentee ballots? People who work with, like Ilhan Omar and other candidates who work for them. They came to us to our apartments. They tell us that this year you're going to close for it. You don't go nowhere, you stay home.
Now, this again is back in 2020. If any of these allegations are true, or we'll say allegedly right now, all of this is going to have to be investigated. So, yes, Ilhan Omar, yes, your whole campaign is going to be investigated, questioned. Don't destroy any evidence, because if you do, there will be a paper trail. So I'm just letting you know right now, you better make sure that you freeze all evidence. I'm just saying, this is opinion of a paralegal. Make sure you freeze all documentation and evidence, Because, yeah, Somalis may have voted for you en masse, but the question is, were those ballots actually legitimate? Because if you were paying people, that's ballot harvesting and that's fraud, and that's jail time. If you were filling them out for people fraudulently and making sure that the votes went a certain way, that's fraud as well. So your actual candidacy can be questioned. And I don't know who else was running against you at the time. It wasn't Royce White. It might have been Royce White, because I think he's run for House and he's also run for other elected positions in Minneapolis. Yeah. Oh, this is about to be open wide. And you're a naturalized citizen. And if you were involved in any type of fraud, if you knew any of this, because here's the thing, you can't separate yourself from your campaign. Well, there were people doing this. If your campaign in any way coordinated any of this, everybody's going down for this. Everyone. So, you may want to lawyer up. Just saying.
You gotta fill out, so you absentee ballot. When it comes, you come and get it. You just go nowhere, you stay here. They fill out for us.
Now, this says Minnesota Department of Children Commissioner Tiki Brown claims the Quality Learning Center closed down last week. That's the one that Nick Shirley investigated, or one of them that everyone's been talking about, where they misspelled the name on the door. It said luring, and then it's supposed to be learning. Okay, well, this woman claimed that it was shut down last week, right? Today, however, the Quality Learning Center was packed with kids. They didn't have any kids before, but now today they're packed with kids, even though they're also supposed to be closed. The New York Post reports the children were trucked in, with one local saying it was the first time they had seen kids go into the building. They need to coordinate next time before they try to cover up a crime. Guys, this is everyone, like the whole administration, everyone is involved in this fraud.
Is there fraud going on here? No, it's a video. I just want to know, what's your response? Huh? Get the out of here. What's your response to the allegations? Is there fraud going on here, and is there children? That's all. Don't harass me for here.
We are aware of a video that's being circulated that has gained local and national attention about child care centers in Minnesota. While we have questions about some of the methods that were used in the video, we do take the concerns that the video raises about fraud very seriously. Each of the facilities mentioned in the video has been visited at least once in the last 6 months as part of our typical licensing process. And in fact, our staff are out in the community today to visit each of these sites again so that we can look into the concerns that were raised in the video. So I won't go into any detail about whether or not any of these have any open investigations. I will share that our team was notified that Quality Learning Center closed just over a week ago. And I believe the details that were given at that time were around space concerns. And that's what was shared. The previous one I mentioned that had been closed some time ago was Mako.
Lies, whole lies, but we know that. Guys, make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell. I will be, there hasn't been as much news as today, like digital ID, all of those things that we've been talking about, but I will be bringing you some more information about that, because now it's like, as soon as I start talking about this stuff, well, now the floodgates are open and there's so much movement that you guys need to be aware of. So make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell.
So shout out to Melanie King and also Nick Shirley. I'm not sure what's going to happen to this individual, because I've played other videos of where there's actually like a watchdog group and a news news reporter, who has done an actual expose on this particular director. And even at the time, that director could not give a response, could not give an answer to any of the fraud. Now, it's very interesting. She was like, oh, well, they were close. Well, they look very open. They look real open if they were closed. Yeah. And also their hours are weird. Their hours are from 2 to 10. What parent is working from 2 p.m. to 10 at night? All the daycare centers. They don't run from like 8 to 6 during school hours. 2 to 10. That's just weird. That's another thing that hasn't even come out yet. I'm sure it will in a couple of weeks when they start, going down these rabbit holes. And it is truly, truly sad that we have the massive fraud that we do. And the other thing, in my opinion, that's insult to injury is it is predominantly in the Somali community. You can't get away from it. It is what it is. Stop committing fraud in your community. Everybody's like, oh, you're being racist, you're being hateful. Nobody's messing with you. Your community, it's in mass committed in this fraud. Like, really, what is going on? And Uncle Coolwater says, good morning. Everybody is getting kicked back. Shut up money. Oh, definitely. And now they all will be exposed and hopefully prison time, deportation. It has to happen. Because here's my thing. If all this stuff comes out, all this exposure happens, and if people are not going to be literally fired in mass, this is going to be horrible. Now, there was another video. I'm not going to show it. I'm just going to bring this up. Apparently, the Attorney General of Minnesota, his son is a city council member, and he got this whole thing in Harvard to do, like, studying in Harvard. So he's been traveling back and forth between Minnesota and Harvard, paid over 110,000 a year. Wait a minute, and given like close to $57,000, okay, in travel and expenses. What? Stop. Now, this is the son of the Attorney General that is also in Minnesota. Like, Minnesota, I'm telling you. I'm telling y'all. Let me see. I want to say the Breakfast Club, they have Donkey of the Day. I'm just going to coin this Fraudster of the Year. Fraudster of the Year goes to Minnesota. And the reason why I say that is because it's not just one area. It's like all areas, all the areas in the with the entitlement program. So you've got childcare, you've got housing assistance, you've got feeding the children, right? In the school aspect, the autism scandals that are going on, the other housing scandals that are going on, right? This is outside of I think they call it their HSS, where you're helping people, right? Where you will come to the state and say, hey, we're going to help homeless people find housing. That's one thing. But they're literally buying houses, making transitional homes for people who come out of prison, or they're saying they're transitional homes and nobody's living in them. I mean, all areas and levels of fraud in Minnesota is at a fever pitch. And then we just saw the video where they were talking about how they're ballot harvesting. In particular, Ilhan Omar's campaign. Didn't mention anybody else's campaign, but mentioned hers. So, yeah, the FBI and the DOJ have their work cut out for them. And y'all better do a good job, because y'all are under the microscope too. We won't even get sidetracked. This whole Epstein debacle. And then the other debacles going on with the gentleman who was accused of planting a bomb in 2021 during January 6th. It took 4 years to find this person. And now that you say you found them, there's overwhelming evidence that it was physically impossible for him to even be there. And that's all coming out. Like, this is crazy. And it's everywhere. The fraud is everywhere. But the good thing about it is it's all coming to light. And Uncle Coolwater says anywhere that Somalian people live is being scammed. They are pass this information on to their people in every state that their people live in. I encourage every state that has a Somali group to do your own investigations of fraud. Trust me, it's happening. Right. And we even have a Somali community here in Georgia. And oh, yeah. Oh, believe me, I'm going to be like, yep, y'all are in the hot seat too. It's automatic now. And that's sad. But if it's happening in Minneapolis, and it's also happening in Columbus, Ohio, and it's also happening in Boston, Massachusetts, and it's also happening in what is it, Maine, Seattle, Washington. Look, trends are trends. If it's happening, it's happening. No one's messing with you. So don't try to play the race card, which is hilarious to me. You can't. And act like, oh, they're discriminating against us. They're being racist. No, nobody's doing anything to you. We're cool with you being here because you're allowed to come over here in your refugee status. The problem we're having is you robbing the American people. That's a problem. Yeah, we're not down with that. And you will be deported as sure as the sun rises and sets. And we will all vote for it. And the reason why everyone is calling so strongly to have all Somalians deported is because we can't trust any of you. That's the problem. Because people even in Minneapolis, they were taking the kickbacks when they were lying about their children being autistic. No one told you to lie, but you did. Got yourselves involved. You didn't say, no, I'm here in America. I want to keep my nose clean. I want to do what's right. And if there is a very small percentage of people that are like that in the Somalian community, it's a very small, very tiny subset. I would say maybe less than 5% of you, maybe. And that's sad. And that you've used the children to do this. And how do we know those children, weren't the children of the people that own the facility? They're supposed to have something like 70 or 80 children in that facility that was in the video. You saw maybe 4 or 5 kids rolling up in there. Really? So they all just play inside this building that nobody can go in and investigate. I'm liking the fact that, these departments are waking up and they're saying, okay, we want video evidence, we want photographs, we want everything. If the money's going to continue to roll, we're holding all payments until we can verify everything. And I'm glad that they're finally wanting some physical evidence, but I would definitely implore them, make sure the timestamp dates on the pictures are valid. And they're not just going to take a picture somewhere and then replicate it and maybe flip it. And because there's a whole bunch of manipulation you can do with camera footage these days. So make sure that you are looking at everything, all the microdata, government. Again, we shouldn't be telling you how to do your job, but apparently we have to tell you how to do your job because, yeah. And Sincerely Lawless, thank you so much for reposting the stream. And she says, good morning, founder. May you have a prosperous new year. And you as well. And good morning to you. And Uncle Coolwater says, we need to dig deep on the Somali group that's in Georgia. Yes, up in Clarkston, Georgia. Absolutely. Absolutely. It says all the kids that are going to be put in these buildings are staged. It's definitely a staging. And like I said, it's a worse staging because guarantee you they're the children of the people in charge of these facilities, if that makes sense, right? I'm not saying that, they don't have kids. They've got kids, but their kids aren't enrolled here. And it would be interesting to find out where their children are actually enrolled. Are their children actually going to legitimate daycares around the city? And this is just some type of racket that they're doing? I'm telling you, the jig is up. The jig is up. It's happening, and we all see it. We all see it. And so now, trying to keep on my look, trying to keep my schedule, keep myself on schedule. I got a little bit sidetracked. I'm like, I don't like any of this nonsense going on. So let's see. We got that. I wanted to touch again a little bit on the Tony West video. So yesterday, I played a video regarding Tony West. This gentleman, apparently, he is the brother-in-law to Vice President Harris. And he also worked with the Obama administration as the Assistant Attorney General, worked on the Hillary Clinton campaign in 2016. So I wanted to show just a timeline and breakdown of him. So he was born in 1965. He graduated from Bellarmine College in San Jose, California. He earned his bachelor's degree from Harvard in the late 80s and into the 90s. He was active in politics with the Democratic politics. He received his Juris Doctorate in 92 at Stanford. He serves as a special assistant in the U.S. Department of Justice under the Clinton administration. So you went from getting a Juris Doctorate. It's interesting because it never really says that he was a barred attorney, which means that he actually got his bar licensing. So, when you get your bar license, you take a test. So you went to Harvard, so you went to Harvard, then you went to Stanford, and you got your law degree, and then you went right to working to the Clinton administration right after you graduated. Interesting. Like I said, I find it fascinating because you've never practiced any law. You didn't go to a law firm. Like, there was no time from 92 to 93. Where did you work? You went right into government. Okay, so from 94 to 99, he works as the Assistant United States Attorney in the North District of California, prosecuting cases involving child exploitation, fraud, narcotics, and high-tech crime. That's interesting. How are you prosecuting cases? Where did you get your bar license? If you got your Juris Doctorate, like I'm saying, in order to practice law, you got to have a license, right? Where did it happen in the timeline? Yeah. All right. So we're going to get into it because I'm like, what? He marries Maya Harris, who's the sister of Vice President Harris. Okay. In 99, he serves as Special Assistant Attorney General in California. So apparently you can have a Juris Doctorate in California, but you don't have to be a licensed attorney. You know how we know this? Because somebody else did the same thing. Anyway, yeah. So you can have your Juris Doctorate and be an attorney general, assistant attorney general, but not not be licensed. It's very interesting. Very, very interesting. And sassy lady, good morning. She said, have a blessed new year, Dr. Nichols. You have a blessed new year as well. And thank you so much for everybody that has joined me here on this wonderful journey of building Unfiltered Vision News. I know sometimes I get distracted and, hot under the collar about some of this stuff, but I wanted to run through this timeline with you guys. Now, in 2000, he runs unsuccessfully for the California State Assembly. 2001 to 2009, he finally joins Morrison and Foster as a litigation partner, continues political involvement, including serving. Yeah, he had to have gotten his bar license at some point because you cannot work as an attorney. Now he was working, it says a litigation partner, continues political involvement. I gotta ask this question. Sorry, you guys. What I should say, where did he get his law license? It's not in the timeline, which is what I find fascinating. I was going to skip all the way to the bottom. Okay, so he was admitted into bar in 1993 because I was like, wait a minute. How do we just brush over this? Okay, so he earned his JD in 1992, and then he was admitted into the bar in 93. Okay, so, all right, and that's fine. So you go, and then you work as a U.S. Attorney General. Wow. You know what I'm saying? That doesn't always happen. The U.S. Department of Justice under the Clinton administration, you had just got, so you graduated, just got your law license, didn't work anywhere, didn't have a client, and you work for the U.S. Department of Justice. Must be nice to have the hookup. Anyway, let's continue. He was nominated by President Obama and confirmed as a by the Senate as a Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Division of the DOJ. First African American in the role, he oversees recovery of $8.8 billion under the False Claims Act, more than $3.5 billion in consumer protection cases. Okay. And then we go to 2012, 2014. He serves as acting associate attorney during that time. And he settles, he does bank settlements totaling about $37 billion. 2014, he departs from the DOJ after finalizing major settlements. 2015, there was congressional hearings by the House Judiciary Committee on settlement practices, highlighting concerns over third-party payments. 2016, he co-chaired Vice President Harris's Senate transition team. 2017, he joins Uber as their general counsel. And he serves on the board of the NAACP Legal Defense Education Fund. Stop Settlement Slush Funds Act passes the House in October, aiming to curb DOJ practices from West era. Yeah. So to get into that a little bit more. Now, I wanted to give you that background on who this person is. Okay. Because it plays a role into how and what he did during the Obama administration. So during his tenure as Associate General, which was 2012 to 2014, he led post 2008 financial crisis. Okay. For the misconduct related to residual mortgage-backed securities and other toxic assets that contributed to the housing crash. These were civil settlements, not criminal prosecutions, and focused on recovering funds for harmed consumers, investors, and the government. West outlined 3 principles guiding these cases: holding institutions accountable regardless of size, ensuring penalties reflected harm caused, and providing meaningful relief to victims. Did anybody ever see any money? Did you ever know that this was going on? That they were fighting for relief for the American people? I never saw anything. I got damaged. Yeah. By his departure, he had extracted over 30 to 37 billion in total settlements. Major ones included a JP Morgan Chase $13 billion settlement for misleading investors about RMBS quality, included $4 billion in consumer relief, loan modifications. Did anybody get a loan modification like a real one? Oh, some did, but they still lost their homes, right? $2 billion in civil penalties. Bank of America recorded $16.65 billion settlement for financial fraud, leading to the crisis, covering actions by Bank of America countrywide, Merrill Lynch, including $7 billion in consumer relief. right? And $5 billion in penalties. Other notable settlements under his oversight included deals with Citigroup and others contributing to the overall 37 billion total, right? And it lacked congressional oversight. So the settlements drew criticism for lack of congressional oversight, particularly in how portions of the funds were directed to third party activist groups without congressional appropriation or review. So he basically sued these companies, got the money, and said, we're just going to send it over there. Nobody said anything. They couldn't. This was part of Obama. Anybody get relief under this? I'm just saying, I'm going to keep asking. This practice was labeled a slush fund by critics as it allowed the executive branch to allocate money outside the normal legislative process. Here's how it unfolded. So, the mechanism of bypass in settlements like those with Bank of America, JP Morgan, banks received enhanced credit, okay, toward their obligations if they donated to third party organizations such as housing counseling agencies or community development groups, Voice, Metro, IAF, and affiliates of groups like the National Council of La Raza. Now, if anybody heard La Raza, that's the race. It is a alleged Latino organization or Hispanic organization, very similar to the KKK. We'll just keep that in short. You look up La Raza for yourself. That's what they do. They were directed to donate to these individuals. This resulted in nearly $1 billion directed to such groups in the Obama DOJ final 2 years, 2015 to 2016. But the practice began under West leadership in 2014. These donations were mandatory for credit, but not subject to congressional spending controls as they came from private settlements rather than taxpayer funds. That's how they got around it. Just telling you. Lobbying, DOJ discretion, congressional response to absence of controls. The House Judiciary Committee held oversight hearings in February and May of 2015, questioning DOJ officials on these practices, revealing internal documents about the lobbying. A 2017 congressional report noted that such controls were entirely absent in DOJ's banking settlements, with DOJ relying only on independent monitors appointed by DOJ itself rather than congressional review. This led to Stop Settlement Slush Funds Act, passing the House in 2017 to prohibit such third-party payments in future DOJ settlements. Defenders, including DOJ under Obama, argued the settlements provided victim relief efficiently, but critics from both parties saw it as an end run around Congress favoring ideologically aligned groups, because most of the groups that this money went to were Democratic. They weren't Democratic and independent and Republican. No, policing the American people. So I asked, like, how was he able to do this? So the Obama administration was able to direct portions of major bank settlements to third-party organizations without congressional oversight, primarily through the U.S. Department of Justice's discretionary authority in negotiating and structuring civil enforcement settlements. This practice, which critics dubbed as slush fund, stemmed from the executive branch's role in enforcing federal laws, allowing the DOJ to impose settlement terms on private parties like banks without needing legislative approval for how the funds were allocated. He did that. So for anybody out there that's just all hail King Obama, he screwed everybody, everyone, for the Democratic Party. I mean, I guess at least the Democratic Party benefited, but nobody else did. No one else. No one else. Now, like I said, it's pretty lengthy. So, how it played out in practice, settlements like those with JP Morgan and Bank of America included provisions for consumer relief that funneled money to groups such as the National Council of La Raza, now um, UNDOS US, and other liberal leaning organizations, activist groups labeled DOJ officials directly for inclusion in these deals, and the terms were incorporated without public or congressional input. So, did again, no, I didn't know about this. I'm grateful for Uncle Coolwater sending me the video on it, and I just dug a little bit deeper when I got that name Tony West. I was like, well, what's going on? Policed these companies for that money, and it all went back to predominantly Democratic entities. So critics, including congressional Republicans and some Democrats, argued this subverted Congress's power of the purse by turning settlements into a backdoor funding mechanism for favored causes, potentially violating separation of powers. House Judiciary Committee investigations in 2015, 2016 uncovered internal documents showing the deliberate selection of recipients over direct victim compensation. Like I said, I didn't see anything. I didn't get any letters, nothing. Nothing. But they did this. Now, end of the practice, right? So this approach ended under the Trump administration in 2017 when Attorney General Jeff Sessions issued a memo prohibiting third-party payments in settlements to prevent future bypasses of Congress. Congress also passed the Stop Settlement Slush Fund Act in the House, though it didn't become law. Okay. And in the Biden DOJ briefly revived similar practices in 2022 before facing pushback. The Obama era method highlighted tensions in executive authority, but was enabled by the absence of explicit prohibitions and the private nature of the funds involved. Can you imagine if Trump did something like this? Come on. Come on. And he was like, we need to shut this down. This shouldn't be done. You may not like him. You might hate his guts. But I'm at least glad he stood up for this. Just saying. I'm just saying. Soulful, thank you so much for joining us this morning and reposting the stream. And Son of Khalid says, good morning, sister. I'm glad to be able to join you on your broadcast. Oh, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Okay. Uncle Coolwater Lord. This is long. Okay. So it appears that immigrants invading America are playing by different rules than the foundational Americans. We didn't get the memo that you should just rip the country off and never go to jail, right? Every immigrant group can do all kinds of unethical practices and never get penalized like Black Americans do if we do the same unethical crimes. Exactly. It's crazy. But we're going to press on through this. And so I asked, I said, I can see where, they were able to frame it. However, aren't there banks backed by the federal government, like the FDIC? So in a way, is that money still viewed as federal? And because I was like, like, what are we doing? Like, what's going on? So it says your point about the FDI insurance is interesting angle, but it doesn't change the legal classification of these settlement funds as private rather than federal or taxpayer money. Okay. So yes, there is the FDIC, but this is where the funds were treated private in civil enforcement actions. And that's what they made it. They made it civil. Okay. The DOJ negotiates settlements where defendants, the banks, agree to pay penalties or provide relief directly, right? When structured as mandatory donations or consumer relief to third parties, the money flows straight from the private entity to the recipient, never entering the U.S. Treasury. That's how they were able to do it. Look, biggest felon, in my opinion, who never went to prison. Because this is prison worthy right here. This should have never happened within our federal government. It should have never been allowed. But they allowed it. It happened. It happened on this Congress's watch, and nobody did anything. Nobody stood up to anybody. This was the core defense used by the Obama DOJ. Since the funds aren't deposited into federal coffers first, they aren't drawn from the Treasury and thus don't trigger the appropriations clause, requiring congressional approval for spending federal money. And he's not wrong. This was just a workaround. It doesn't make it any less criminal, in my opinion, because you used your position to take money and transfer it over here. And we all know all of these entities donate right back to the Democratic Party. So it was all circular. Criminals, like, stop it. Stop. It's crazy. So statutes like the Miscellaneous Receipts Act normally require agencies to deposit recoveries into the Treasury, but the DOJ bypassed this by mandating direct private to private transfers. So there wasn't like, okay, banks, we're going to get this money back from you and we're going to give it back to the taxpayers, put it into the Treasury, the people that you stole from, the people that you defrauded. No, we're going to give it directly to these private institutions and we're going to ask them to restore the public. Really? Like, that's what we did. That's what we did. That's what we did. And Son of Khalid says, anytime Africans are involved, there's going to be a scam. It's so sad, right? They've emptied life savings for our elders and those who don't know any better. It's up to us to educate our community against these criminals. Yeah, they call it the Nigerian scheme. That's something that's like the big Nigerian prince scheme. So there was no evidence of an FDI link in the debate. Okay. So I said, can you outline the third parties and community development groups that the banks were obligated to donate to? So they were obligated. So it was set up to just go from here to here. But again, like I said, if they're Democratic, they're donating a cut of that money right back to the Democratic Party. And I said, also, can you know if any of these organizations are linked to the Democratic Party? So third party community development groups in the DOJ settlements. It looks like JP Morgan, Citigroup, those were some of the people that had to pay. These groups were typically selected from HUD approved list of housing counseling agencies, community development entities, and nonprofit focused on affordable housing, foreclosure prevention, and neighborhood stabilization. Banks chose recipients but had to meet DOJ mandated minimums. So for Bank of America, at least $490 million in donations, including $100 million minimum to community groups. So they were making sure people were getting paid. I don't ever want to hear it. I don't ever want to hear it. We can't do this. And you can do it when you want to be a criminal. You can do it when you want to. Just saying. Housing counseling and community development nonprofits. So the National Council of La Raza, right? And this was part of Bank of America's 50 to 100 million is required donations focused on Latino community advocacy, housing, counseling, and immediate reform. Democratic links, strong alignment, endorsed Democratic candidates receive funding from Democratic administrations, and leaders like Janet Muragwa have ties to Clinton era officials and Democratic Party circles. Neighbor Works America, a major recipient with banks obligated to donate for neighborhood stabilization, provides grants for affordable housing and community development. Democratic links, congressionally chattered but criticized as favoring progressive causes. Board includes appointees from Democratic administration, and it partners with groups aligned with Democratic urban policies. National Urban League funded for housing and economic development programs via JP Morgan and Bank of America settlement focuses on civil rights and urban empowerment. Really? That's what they focused on. They focused on civil rights and didn't fix anything in the Black community. But we were used as like, hey, well, civil rights. Really? Y'all probably got hundreds of millions of dollars and pocketed most of it. Just disgusting. So long-standing ties with leaders like Mark Morial have endorsed Democrats, and the organization receives support from Democratic-led initiatives. Look, there's no Republicans in here, no independents. Look, can I get a libertarian? Just saying. Industrial Areas Foundation, affiliates, and community organization groups. They are all Democrats. Metro IAF, Legal Aid, even. Legal Aid is predominantly Democrat. They got a minimum of $30 million from Bank of America. Did anybody get any assistance? Oh, yeah, you probably did, because see, as long as they gave you advice, as long as the phone was ringing, and as long as they took an intake from you, yeah, they earned that $30 million. It's disgusting. State housing finance agencies like CDIFIs, community development financial institutions. Yeah, they got $2.5 billion from Citigroup. Self-help federal credit union, local initiatives to support corporations. Yeah, they got funded for community-led and development settlements. Democratic links, some have ties to Democratic philanthropists and policies criticized as part of partisan slush fund recipients. Yeah, that's where they got their money. And I said, can you share about the Biden administration, what they were trying to do? Okay, so Biden was trying to revive this under his administration. Yeah. Calling it restoration to supplemental environment projects. And it got shut down. Yeah, Merrick Garland issued a memorandum, and the DOJ published an interim final rule, later finalized in 24, revoking Trump-era prohibitions on such payments. Yeah. They tried. They tried. So in practice, the revival led to SEPs in about 90 small administrative settlements and a handful of judicial decrees from 22 onward, focusing on direct community benefits rather than large-scale diversions seen in some Obama-era cases. So there were criticisms, right, of this slush fund. So ultimately, while the policy was implemented with limitations and focused on environmental justice goals, its scale remained modest compared to the pre-2017 usage, and it faced ongoing partisan opposition as a perceived revival of controversial executive discretion in settlements, which is interesting, right? Because they passed this act, right? So it led to pushback, reversal, and repeated attempts to pass. So there were repeated attempts to pass it. So it passed in the House, which it passed multiple times in the House, but not the Senate. So it never became law. Never became law. I mean, just the and you wonder why the people are screaming and shouting. You wonder why the people are upset. The administration countered that the practice was narrowly tailored, beneficial for public health, and not akin to past abuses. Stop that. But again, they tried. It's one of the things we could have got away with it if it weren't for you pesky kids, right? Sniffing around and saying, hey, you can't do that. Trump administration, don't you ever do something like this to the American people. This was a fleecing. This was a transfer of wealth. Now we know how a lot of these organizations got propped up during that time. They didn't help anybody. They helped themselves. Now, some of them might have helped in their communities, right? The Latino community, they might have helped to build up their community because they sure have gotten rid of the black people in any of those communities. Yeah. We need a new form of government. I'm tired. We need to start over. The criminal behavior is so far beyond the pale. It's like, where do you start with this mess? But let's get to these top 5 stories that we have for this year that I did look up in with the help of Grok. So we're going to start with the Palisades fire because that's where I want to start first. So that is one of the top stories. And in January of this year, we had the devastating fires. It burned over 15,000 acres and becoming California's most destructive fire on record. The blaze displaced thousands, caused poor air quality, leading to respiratory issues, resulted in an estimate 440 deaths, far exceeding the official 31. Economically, they strained the insurance markets, raised living costs, and impacted employment and agricultural nationwide through supply chain disruptions. This fire amplifies climate change awareness, influencing federal debates, and highlighting vulnerabilities in urban areas with long-term health and rebuilding costs burdening affected communities. Now, that's just the take of Grok. My take is this: there were people committing arson. They started these fires on purpose. They purposely made sure that the water was diverted so there wasn't enough water to take care of these fires happening, and the stretch and scope that it stretched out. The fire department in LA, they couldn't get it done, and they let these places burn down, and they've allowed this to not be fixed. People are still waiting to get the permits to rebuild, and people have walked away in frustration because they don't know what else to do, and they're not getting the value of their homes so they can go buy another home. Their home might have been worth $2 million. They're not getting $2 million so they can buy another home. No, that's not happening, and that's the sad part. And they're gonna have to pay us reparations one way or another. Every group got reparations from grievances, and no one said a word. It's only us that anyone has a problem with. I know, right? It's crazy. It is very crazy. But let's check out this video in regards to the Palisades. Sorry, there's no audio. But yeah, this is what happened. So sad. So sad. And it was devastating and overwhelming. What happened? Can you imagine being in California and seeing this? I'm like, wow. Let me move a little bit. Oops. Add it back to the stage. I didn't mean to take it off of the stage. I just wanted to get a little bit further so you guys could see it from a different direction. And then that was what was happening at nighttime with the Palisades fire. Now, the next story that we're going to go to is the Pope. And this Pope, I think he's like the first American Pope, or at least he's the first one from Chicago. But let's check this out.
Cardinal Caroline, sure. Here we go. Here we go. Now we know. I'm going to have the Monsignor explain what we're going to hear right now. A new pontiff about to be announced. We are going to see Cardinal Momberti, a French cardinal
cardinal come out and say to us, I announce to you, can you tell who great news, good news, Habemus Papam.
Annuncio vobis gaudium magnum.
Okay, I'm gonna skip forward a little bit. There he is. Pope Leo. The 14th. When this happened, I want to say March of this year. Now, the other thing that we experienced this year was the longest shutdown by our government in U.S. history.
Shutdown has now become the longest in U.S. history. Since 1977, there have been 21 shutdowns. What are the 5 longest ones? Why did they happen? And how did they finally come to an end? Let's break it down. All right, let's start with number 5. It lasted 16 days during the Obama administration in 2013. The dispute centered around the Affordable Care Act. Congress failed to agree on a budget after Republican lawmakers pushed to defund Obamacare. Senate Democrats and the Obama administration rejected those proposals, setting off a partial government shutdown in early October of that year.
Well, last night I signed legislation to reopen our government and pay America's bills.
And you know what's interesting? We're right back here again. Why did we have the shutdown that we just had? Oh, the Affordable Care Act. They're threatening to shut down the government again this coming January. Why? The Affordable Care Act. It's crazy.
First government shutdown in 17 years is now over.
The shutdown finally ended on October 16th when both chambers of Congress voted to fund the government through January 15th and extend the debt limit.
There are no winners here.
No winners indeed. The 16-day shutdown cost, by one estimate, $24 billion and hurt U.S. credibility around the world.
Minor changes were made to the Affordable Care Act, like requiring income verification for those receiving health care subsidies. President Obama signed the bill shortly after midnight on October 17th, ending the shutdown. Moving on to number 4, the 4th longest shutdown lasted 17 days during the Carter administration in 1978. It was one of 5 shutdowns that happened under President Jimmy Carter. This one started with several disagreements, including funding for abortion and a defense spending bill to build a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. That's something President Carter called wasteful spending. The government reopened after Congress passed legislation that excluded funding for the aircraft carrier and a public works project, while also maintaining a compromise on abortion funding. This takes us to number 3. The 3rd longest government shutdown lasted 21 days during President Clinton's administration in 1996.
And there is very little indication this evening that the White House and the Republicans in Congress are going to resolve their differences about how and when to balance the federal budget.
At the time, Republicans had just taken control of the House for the first time in decades. Clinton and Republicans clashed over how to balance the nation's budget, and the president vetoing a Republican budget proposal to give control of Medicaid to the states.
We can balance the budget without doing what they seek to do.
The shutdown ended when Republicans agreed to a proposal made by Clinton.
Republicans agreed to bring all federal workers back and pay them until January 26th. But there will be no money for workers to spend on programs House Republicans regard as unessential, such as foreign aid, the Peace Corps, and environmental protection.
Moving on to the 2nd longest government shutdown in U.S. history, it happened in 2019 during President Trump's first term. At the time, the Senate failed to pass a funding bill that included a $5.7 billion request from President Trump to help build a wall along the southern border.
Even if it has no wall money? Or does it have to have wall
I only, look, I have other alternatives if I have to, and I'll use those alternatives if I have to. And we want to go through the system. We have to have a wall in this country.
The shutdown cost the U.S. economy an estimated $3 billion. It finally ended when Trump signed legislation to reopen and fund the government.
A short-term deal, no money for a wall. Back pay for federal workers who missed paychecks, but not for thousands of federal contractors who aren't covered by laws governing shutdowns. And a bipartisan congressional conference will try to hammer out a deal on border security.
That 2019 stalemate held the record for the longest shutdown in American history Until now, the current shutdown has officially surpassed the 35-day mark.
The president trying to ramp up the pressure, threatening mass layoffs and cuts to programs.
We can do things during the shutdown that are irreversible.
It began after both parties failed to pass competing spending measures, a Democratic-backed bill that would have extended the Affordable Care Act subsidies and reversed cuts to Medicaid, and a Republican stopgap bill that would have kept the government running for 7 more weeks. Democrats are pushing to extend expiring tax credits that have helped millions of Americans afford health insurance. Republicans, meanwhile, insist they will not negotiate on those provisions until the government is reopened, accusing Democrats of holding the government hostage to have those health care negotiations. Across the country, hundreds of thousands of federal employees remain without pay. SNAP benefits and air travel operations are facing growing disruptions. Vote after vote has failed to break the impasse on the Senate floor, and both sides are not close to a deal. How long will this stalemate last? Only time will tell.
Yeah. And it ended 43 days later. Interesting how they both happened under Trump. And one was considering the border crisis, right? He just wanted to fund the border wall, which is kind of interesting because he could have opened up the government and still got his money for his border wall after it. He didn't know that the first time. He knows it now. And he shut a lot of things down. Now, the next one is the U.S. bombed Iran. And like, where are we going from there with this whole situation? So tensions boiled over in June 2025 this year when the U.S. and Israel conducted strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities. If those of you that hadn't remembered, let's provide this, right? So the conflict raised national security anxieties among Americans, with President Trump's warning of further military action contributing to public fears of broader war involvement. Economically, it led to fluctuations in energy prices, straining household budgets, while also sparking domestic protests and debates over U.S. foreign policy. The situation influenced migration patterns with indirect effects on U.S. border policies amid regional displacement and prompted renewed nuclear negotiations that affected American perceptions of global stability. So let's check this out.
On June the 21st, 2025, the US bombed 3 nuclear sites in Iran, joining a war with Israel and plunging the world into uncertainty. Today is Sunday, June the 22nd. I am Helen Walters. I'm head of media and curation at TED, and I'm joined by geopolitical expert and G0.
Closely. The Americans process the intelligence. The Israelis don't have that much capacity to do that. But that doesn't mean that Trump is getting all of that only from the Americans. So the Prime Minister of Israel is trying, through the intelligence that he is giving directly in his calls to Trump, to make him feel that there is greater urgency to an American attack. That if the U.S. doesn't take the Iranians out, if they engage in negotiations, that it's going to lead to conflagration in the region. It doesn't stop with Israel. It ends up in New York, right? So that's one tactic that they use. A second tactic is the Israelis continue to escalate. The Americans only hit 3 nuclear sites. The Israelis not only assassinated the heads of the Quds Force and the IRGC and other military leaders, they also attacked and killed a security official that was in charge of the U.S.-Iranian negotiations on the nuclear program.
Yeah. And so in my opinion, I'm like, so where do we go from here? Right. And so Khalid brings up the same government that killed Gaddafi when he tried to help us. Yeah, Gaddafi, he wanted to make his people millionaires and he was going to do it. And they killed him. Yeah. What are we doing in Iran? Like, what's going on? And why are we helping Israel do it? I know it all comes back to money. And the top story for this year, yes, is Charlie Kirk. And the reason why it's one of the top stories is because it was a public assassination of somebody who, yes, like him or not, was a public figure. a very large public figure, very outwardly spoken public figure. And I find it interesting how they've tried to idolize and immortalize this person in such a way and stand him next to people like Kennedy and Martin Luther King and other um, peace leaders. Stop that. He had his lane. I'm not putting him up there with them. Stop that. That's a problem. And it is a problem, especially for Christians in this country. You guys need to listen up. We're not supposed to be doing idol worship. You need to go back to the 10 Commandments and you need to read it. You shall have no other God before me. Stop making idols of people. Stop idolizing these humans. Stop it. It's sinful. It's disgusting. Knock it off. But we're going to go over this story really quickly because, yes, it is one of the top stories.
Okay, now 5 is a lot, right? I'm going to give you.
Now, this one doesn't have words.
Do you know how
it
many
just
mass
has
shooters there have been in
commentary.
America?
Political violence has hurt too many innocent people and taken too many lives.
This morning, I can tell you that we have recovered what we believe is the weapon that was used in yesterday's shooting. It is a high-powered bolt-action rifle.
Yeah. And so, they know that they've found their person of interest, and that person of interest has now become the suspect within this assassination, and a trial is now proceeding. And we're going to see how all of this plays out. There has been, countless people trying to get their input. I know Candace on her show, she's doing an ongoing investigation. Other people still have lots of questions of what actually happened, and when I looked at it, and my take on it was like, why did they put him in a kill position? What I mean by that, he was like in a pit, so from any direction he could have been accessed and murdered. He did not have the same types of security that he normally had, where somebody was standing directly behind him and two other people directly at his side, like other events. Why did the security protocol change? Those are the questions that I was asking. What happened? And it's one of those things, will we ever get a straight answer? Because right now, our government, I'm sorry, it's sad what's happening within our government, because there is a war going on, even within our federal government, of people that want to maintain power and control. Then they could care less what happens to the American people, and other people fighting against that. So the American people have a government that they could actually look towards to trust. Right now, nobody trusts the government at the federal level, state level, or even the local level. Right now, they're losing ground. They are losing their footing, in my opinion. And it's going to be interesting to see where all of this goes in 2026, because you know what? At the end of the day, especially at the local level and the state level, you need the support of the American people. You do. We will make sure that elections are fair and free. And anything beyond that is fraud, period. No one's putting up with it anymore. I know here in the state of Georgia, they are definitely not putting up with it, especially after they found 315,000 votes that weren't certified for the 2020 election. And now they want to just act like, well, nothing to see here. Oh, well, your job and prison. That's what should be happening. People should just be thrown in prison right now in Georgia for allowing those things to happen. And 2 women got away with it, in my opinion, allegedly. Turned around and sued Rudy Giuliani, and they'll never see a dime of that money. And to me, that's kind of justice. You got what you got, but you can't get any more, because what you did was fraudulent. That's why you're going through what you're going through. See, when you dance with the devil, you will get bit. You will. It'll happen. It is what it is. Now, we've got about 25 minutes left of the program, to the broadcast. So if there's anybody out there who would like to join me here on the show, just let me know. you can send me a message in the chat that, hey, I sent you a message either at unfilteredvisionnews@gmail.com to send me a link to join the show or a direct message to my X account. So, with that, we're going to take a quick break. And when we return, we're going to finish up with some more of this news and set ourselves up for the new year. It's going to be great. 2026 is going to be amazing. So, thank you so much for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News, and we will see you on the other side.
At All Sides, we give bias ratings for hundreds of media outlets. By freeing people from filter bubbles and providing different perspectives, we can all be better equipped to understand the world and each other. So how do we do it?
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern. My name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, and I will be your host. And son of Khalid said something kind of funny during the break. He said, lay down with dogs and wake up with fleas. Absolutely. And always remember that a hit dog is going to holler. So a lot of these people out here, shouting like, oh my gosh, this is racism. Oh my gosh, stop that. Stop that. You're probably involved in the fraud, dude. Stop it. I think we've all gotten, and I don't want us to get numb, because sometimes when you're being abused, and we are being abused as a general public, let's just admit it, we are a battered wife in the situation. You get used to it. You get used to being taken advantage of. You get used to being lied to. You get used to, being told to be quiet and just deal with it. And I'm telling each and every one of us, do not get complicit. We will not have battered woman syndrome in this country. We will stand up. We will rail against those who have decided they are above the law. They do not have to follow any laws, and they're just going to march forward with their criminal activity. We're not putting up with it. So just understand, as the American public, we are going to go after you like eating an elephant, one bite at a time. And it's just going to take small cities going after the corruption and putting people in jail, one city at a time. And as it happens, people are going to be too afraid to commit any more crime because they're going to be like, oop, I will get put in jail. Not here in America. I'm not doing it. And it needs to start in places like Minneapolis, where people are being held accountable. Just because you're not sitting on the city council as a concerned citizen, you can start getting people put in jail. This fraud, just because the state doesn't want to do it, you keep pressing, you keep hammering it, you keep, doing what Nick Shirley is doing. Take pictures, case these buildings, call the phone numbers. There was a phone number, I think it was like Sweet Angels facility or some daycare center, and it was ringing to Tim Walz's office. Why is there a daycare center ringing to your office, Tim Walz? Those are questions that people are going to ask. And it's going to happen. It's going to happen. There's going to be a revolution in this country because you're only going to be able to get away with this fraud for so long, and you've run out of time. You've run out of time. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for it, and we are going to run every single one of you off the soil. So don't get comfortable. Don't, especially people with statuses, visas, green cards, all that stuff. Don't get comfortable. You're going to be removed from this country. And I'm glad that there are like 30 countries that are barred and blocked from even coming here. They no longer have refugee status. Like I've been saying, they need to investigate people that just came up to the border and said, I'm seeking asylum. I'm seeking this. You can't seek any of those things unless you were designated as a country to even have that status. So if you came to the border through a legal passage, right? Talking about I'm asylum, I'm a refugee. All of those cases need to be tracked back to what those people said, find them and deport them immediately because it's a lie. Because if they're not from any countries that we designated as asylum or refugee, they lied. Nobody's even talking about that. But that's a discussion that needs to be out there. So let's end our program with this. The DOJ investigates diversity initiatives using fraud law. What shocker. I'm just not shocked anymore. It's crazy. My goodness. So the US, I'm sorry, the Justice Department, DOJ, is using the False Claims Act to investigate diversity initiatives at some major companies, including Google and Verizon. These False Claims Act is typically used to investigate and punish companies that overbill government in contracts. Wow, where have we seen that played out? Using this act, the DOC, maybe they meant to say DOJ, okay, began issuing civil investigative demands to companies in October, directing them to provide information about diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. So, for context, on the first day of his second term, Donald Trump signed executive orders amid at dismantling diversity programs and directing government contractors to end illegal DEI discrimination. The DOJ's use of the False Claims Act means companies that maintain DEI policies that the Trump administration deems discriminatory can be accused of filing false claims for government payment. They're just like, we are not going to give up DEI. Okay, fine. You can be held accountable if you're overbilling, period. So this is how the media covered. The Wall Street Journal reported that DEI isn't the only area in which the Trump administration is using the law inconveniently, as the DOJ has also used the False Claims Act to subpoena doctors and clinics it suspects have provided transgender treatments to youth that are banned in some states. New York Post, that leans right, wrote that the Trump administration is stepping up its war on DEI and called the move part of a broader DOJ push to use the False Claims Act as a civil rights enforcement tool. USA Today wrote that the Trump administration is using the law to target major companies that the administration has aggressively pursued employers to change their hiring practices. Yeah, it would be nice if we actually did live in a world where it was truly merit based, but you know what? It's not. And the reason why I'm saying it's not, look at a nail shop. Do you see races of people working in a nail shop? No, you don't. Not even in some beauty salons, right? You don't. And should you? Is the question. You know, if you're going to have an all Asian nail shop, why can't there be an all black nail tech shop? And it's funny because I live here in Georgia and these Asians, they figured that out and they call themselves a black owned business. There ain't nobody black working in there. Not one person. The person at the front barely speaks English, along with the nail techs, because they know how important that black dollar is. So these DEI practices, okay, you can keep chasing down that rabbit hole, spending your money on that if you want to. I'm just saying, it's crazy. Now this is another one. Judge blocks gender confidentiality for minors in California schools. Interesting. So the U.S. District Court Judge Roger T. Menendez issued a class-wide permanent injunction last Monday, blocking a California policy that required teachers to withhold minors' gender identities from their parents. What? Yeah, that's happening. California is wild. The Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals temporarily appealed the ruling on Friday. So, for the details, the injunction, Marabelli et al. Versus Olson et al., was spearheaded by the Thompson More Society and sparked by teachers Elizabeth Marabelli and Lori West, who reportedly viewed withholding information from the students' parents as unconstitutional and immoral. Yeah. The appeal, which the circuit court said was to preserve the status quo pending a future ruling, eventually granted Attorney General Rob Bonta's request for a stay. So the key quotes, the Thompson More Society stated under California parental exclusion policies, children had an unqualified right to engage in a social transition to the opposite gender at school, forcing all teachers to use opposite sex pronouns and new name. And teachers were required to conceal the gender transition from the child's parents absent the child's affirmative consent. So if the kid said, "You can't tell my parents," they were like, "Okay, well, we have to comply with this." What? I'm you under my roof. I'm paying for your meals, and you can't tell me what's happening with my kid, and my kid is look. California's wild. So this placed Elizabeth and Lori in an impossible position, lie to parents in violation of their faith and ethics or risk retaliation and ultimately their jobs. The society noted that the district court's statement, California's education policymakers may be experts on primary and secondary education, but they would not receive top grades as students of constitutional law. A representative from Bonta's office said the unfortunate reality is that some children will encounter rejection, abandonment, or abuse if they reveal their gender identity at home. What are we talking about? So they can live as Bobby at school, but live as Bonnie at home? Like, what are they doing? What? What have you done, California? Y'all are wild. Y'all are crazy. You are insane. Insane people. It's disgusting. And guess what? The Chevron doctrine was done away with. So your experts are trash and they can no longer dictate. And moving on. So this is how the media covered it. Outlets on the right of the political spectrum, such as CBN, Bright Bias, more prominently highlighted the injunction, while outlets on the left, such as San Francisco Chronicle, more prominently highlighted the temporary stay. Outlets on the right often use the language of the Thomas More Society, referring to the policies as secrecy, while outlets on the left tended to avoid the word. Newsweek, which is center, emphasized that the injunction directly conflicts with California's Safety Act, AB 1955, signed by Governor Gavin Newsom, a Democrat, in 2024, which banned schools from disclosing students' gender identity or pronouns to parents without the student's consent. How is that even possible? How are you under the legal age of 18? You're not living on your own. You are not emancipated. And the student gets to dictate to everybody, you can't tell my parents. I think the parents would know if you were wearing a binder, if you're a female. I think the parents would know if you were dressing like a little girl, if you're a boy. I think the parents might know. Gavin Newsom signed this into law. This is the same man that wants to run for president of the United States in 2028. He's already running around the country. Wake up, America. Wake up. 2026 is going to be an interesting ride. I'm just saying. And with that, This will be our last stream, our last broadcast of the year. Thank you guys so much for joining me. And going into the month of January, and this will just be for the month of January, the broadcast will start at 7:30 a.m. in the morning. I'm going to be volunteering at my church. We do something that's called 21 Days of Prayer. So during those 21 days, I will actually be at church in the morning, and I won't be back until after 7 o'clock, which is why I will be starting the broadcast at 7:30 in the morning as opposed to 7 o'clock. So I will definitely make sure I put that post out there, and that's going to start January 5th. Yes, that will be our first day back into the new year. So it'll be January 5th, 7:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. That will be the block of time for Unfiltered Vision News. But again, thank you guys so much for joining me here. It's been an incredible 2025, and I'm looking forward to an amazing 2026. So happy new year. And remember, stay well, stay focused, and stay unfiltered. We will see you in the new year.